The Ravens are eyeing a huge opportunity. There's a pass rusher who could be exactly what the team needs to strengthen their defense. But what's even more interesting is that he's still an under-the-radar name. What if I told you he has the potential to be one of the surprises of the upcoming draft? But will the Ravens take a chance on him? And most importantly, what could he bring to our defense? Stick with me until the end, because you won't want to miss the answers to these questions and discover how this signing could change everything. Go Ravens! Everyone talks about the first round of the draft as if it's the only moment that matters. And it's easy to see why. That's where the biggest names are, the guys who are all over TV with all the hype and who come with sky-high expectations. But real fans know the draft goes far beyond that. There are over 200 picks after the first round, and it's exactly in those moments, when almost no one is paying attention anymore, that the smartest teams shine. The Ravens have always been that type of franchise. They don't just go by the hype. They focus on what really matters. Production, potential, and fit within the system. That's why, year after year, we see Baltimore finding valuable players in the later rounds, guys who no one really talked about at first, but who end up being essential on the field. These hidden gems help keep the roster competitive, even when the salary cap space gets tight. And it's not just once in a while. The list is long. From players who became starters for years to guys who, even as backups, made a difference in key games. This kind of vision, being able to see talent where others only see cold stats or an unknown name, is what separates a good team from a team that's always at the top. Baltimore built its identity this way. Day 3 of the draft is where you find the forgotten players who didn't come from big-name schools, don't have the flashiest physical testing numbers, or simply didn't get as much exposure. But sometimes these very players have something that can't be taught. Instinct, the will to win, and a mentality that fits the Ravens' style of football. This part of the draft requires a different kind of attention. It's less about what the player looks like, and more about what he actually does on the field. And when the coaching staff can connect those dots, a golden opportunity arises. It's like finding value where no one else is looking. And let's be honest, there's nothing more Ravens than that. So, when the fans are watching Day 3 of the draft, don't think it's all over. On the contrary, this is when Baltimore's front office usually shows they truly understand the game. And if another one of these hidden gems hits, the impact on the roster could be much bigger than many first-round picks out there. It's in exactly the scenario that a different, little-known name emerges, one that's starting to catch the attention of those who know how to truly evaluate talent. And his name is David Walker. Maybe you've never heard of him, and that's okay. He didn't come from a famous school, he hasn't been in the national media spotlight, and he's not on any favorite list for the early rounds. But that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve attention. In fact, it's precisely because he's under the radar that Walker represents everything the Ravens love to find: raw talent, productivity, and the hunger to prove he can compete with anyone. Walker played at Central Arkansas, a school that competes in the FCS, a division below the major NCAA powerhouses. A lot of people turn their noses up at players from this level, as if their production doesn't matter. But when you look at what Walker did there, it's impossible to ignore. He posted 63 tackles for loss and 31 sacks over the last 3 seasons. Numbers that, regardless of division, are incredible. He didn't just dominate one game or another. He dominated entire seasons. And it's not just the stats that impress. On the field, you can see that he has a quick read of the play, explosive acceleration, and a natural instinct to attack the quarterback. These qualities are what make coaches keep an eye on him, even though the rest of the world hasn't noticed yet. The consistent production and competitive attitude show that he wasn't just a good player in the FCS. He was dominant. Of course, NFL scouts know how to differentiate between who dominates purely because of talent and who stands out just because the competition is weaker. And that's where Walker starts to shine even more. Because not only did he dominate in the FCS, he also proved he could compete with FBS players, the bigger school players, when given chance. This changes everything in the evaluation. Even without much fanfare, analysts like Mason Cameron from PFF have already brought up David Walker's name when discussing the Ravens. And that's no coincidence. It's standard. Baltimore always looks at players like him. Walker is exactly the type of talent the team loves to mold. someone who has the hardest to teach qualities and just needs the right opportunity to show what he can do. It's also interesting that he's been mentioned multiple times recently as a potential Ravens pick. When two different analysts, like Mason Cameron and Mel Kiper Jr., bring up the same name in connection with Baltimore, there's something there. It could be insider information, or it could just be the feeling of those who understand the mentality of the franchise. But it's not by chance. What makes Walker even more intriguing is a detail from his athletic background that is now showing up in full force in his pass rushing game. And can you see how little-known players like David Walker can completely change a team's dynamics when given the right chance? Drop a comment if you believe hidden talents can have as much impact as the well-known stars, or if you remember any other underrated player who surprised everyone in the NFL. Let's exchange ideas in the comments. One of the first things that jumps out when watching David Walker is how he moves on the field. He has a lightness in his feet, lateral fluidity, and agility that isn't common in players at his position. And when you discover he has a basketball background, everything starts to make sense. This sport's history has shaped the way he plays football, and that's not an exaggeration. It's easy to see the reflection of this when he explodes off the snap, changes direction quickly, or evades a blocker with balance and coordination. These skills are hard to come by, especially in defensive linemen. Most pass rushers rely heavily on brute strength or straight-line explosiveness. Walker, on the other hand, seems to dance around blockers. He has that rare kind of body control, the kind coaches love because it allows for a full arsenal of technical moves. This versatile skill set makes him more than just an ordinary pass rusher. He can attack from different angles, adjust his path mid-play, and even drop back into short zones when necessary. This flexibility is essential in today's NFL, where offensive schemes are increasingly dynamic, and defenders need to be multifaceted. In Walker, the Ravens could find someone who offers more than just pressure on the quarterback. He could be a strategic piece in various defensive packages. And it's not just in theory. The tape shows us all the time. He doesn't get stuck when his first attempt doesn't work. On the contrary, he adjusts, improvises, changes the timing of his rush, takes a couple short steps to the side, and then comes back with force. That's game intelligence, body reading, knowing where the space is even when the offensive line shuts the doors. It's details like these that make a player stand out in third down situations. Walker isn't the kind of talent who relies on one single attribute to shine. He combines technique, instinct, and refined movement that frequently causes blockers to misjudge timing or angle. In a game where milliseconds decide plays, that's pure gold. And when you add that to the competitive mentality he shows, it's even harder to ignore the potential he carries. Baltimore has already shown that it values this type of player. From time to time, the team bets on athletes with out-of-the-box athletic skills who offer something different from the standard. The versatility Walker shows could be the key to him quickly earning a spot in the rotation, and maybe even more. Sometimes, all it takes is one chance on the field for this type of player to prove how valuable he can be. And if there were any lingering doubts about Walker's ability to compete against the best, what he did at the Senior Bowl made everything crystal clear. It's common to hear that players coming from the FCS don't face the same level of competition as those from the big FBS schools. This criticism often weighs heavily on evaluations and diminishes the value of good prospects. But when a player has a chance to face high-level athletes and responds with dominant performance, that narrative begins to crumble. That's exactly what David Walker did at the Senior Bowl, and not just during the game, but also in practices where scouts pay even closer attention. During the Senior Bowl practice week, Walker showed he wasn't just there to participate. He dominated reps against offensive tackles from the top conferences in college football. Players who were used to facing pass rushers from the SEC or Big Ten were surprised by someone coming from Central Arkansas. Walker won battles with speed, refined technique, and an intensity that caught the attention of even the most skeptical analysts. And when the game came, he kept the level high. PFF recorded an overall grade of 91.1 for him, combining practices and the game. That's not just good, that's elite. It's a grade that puts Walker among the absolute standouts of the event. He managed to transfer everything he showed in FCS tape to a setting where the level of competition is much higher. That's one of the best indicators that a player is ready for professional jump. More importantly, he never looked out of place. While other hype names had lackluster or inconsistent performances, Walker maintained the same combative and focused demeanor he always had in college. That shows maturity, confidence, and preparedness. It shows he knows he can compete. And when a player believes that, he's already mentally ahead of many others who still rely on the status of a big university. For the Ravens, this represents a valuable opportunity. Because when a smaller talent proves he can perform against the big guys, he becomes a low-risk, high-reward piece, especially if he's available on the third day. This type of player usually arrives with a chip on his shoulder, eager to show everyone they were wrong to doubt him. And Baltimore loves that kind of mentality. On a team that values depth and rotation on the defensive line, having someone who's shown consistency against elite college competition could mean the emergence of another strong piece of the system. The Senior Bowl was a perfect showcase, and Walker took full advantage of every second, as if he knew it was his chance to flip the career switch. He didn't just compete, he stood out. And even with this impressive performance, there are still those who can't quite agree on David Walker's exact value in the draft. Well, let's move on to the fifth topic. But before I do, I notice you haven't left a like on this video yet. It's really important for YouTube to continue recommending my content to you, so I can keep bringing you the best Baltimore Ravens content. So, go ahead and leave a like on the video. It's free. Thanks. Let's continue. One of the most curious things in the draft process is when two respected analysts see the same player in completely different ways. That's what happened with David Walker. While Mason Cameron of PFF sees him as an interesting choice on the third day, somewhere in the fourth or fifth round, Mel Kiper Jr. from ESPN projected him as a second-round pick. This difference is not insignificant and raises an important question. Who is seeing Walker's true potential? Such distant projections show that Walker is still a player in the evaluation process. Some see a raw talent who still needs to adapt to the NFL before becoming a starter. Others see a ready pass rusher, underestimated simply because he came from a smaller school. Kiper seems to be in the latter group. For him, what Walker showed on the field, especially the Senior Bowl, would already be enough to justify a high investment. Not every FCS prospect can do that. Mason Cameron, on the other hand, takes a more cautious approach. He recognizes a talent, highlights the production, and praises the technical tools, but also understands the weight that factors like size and college origin can have when it comes to decision-making. It's a view more aligned to the NFL's average, which tends to let players with similar profile fall to the end of the draft, even with good on-field grades. And it's exactly in this kind of situation that the Ravens usually act. When there's a talent that divides opinions but offers technical upside, competitive drive, and system fit, the team trusts its development process. Baltimore isn't afraid to swim against the current when it finds hidden value. They've done it with Matthew Judon, Zadarius Smith, Pernell McPhee, all pass rushers selected in the later rounds who exceeded expectations. History shows that the franchise knows how to exploit the market's perception gaps. And when a player like Walker appears right at this point of conflict between the hype and the skepticism, the Ravens put themselves in an ideal position to capitalize. If he is really available on the third day, it's the kind of situation where the team could find a real gem at a low price. This also raises a red flag. Other teams may be seeing what Kiper sees. If Baltimore really wants to secure the player, they may need to move up a few spots in the middle rounds. Because a strong performance at the Senior Bowl, combined with a production history and athletic qualities, could silently raise his name on draft boards in the days leading up to the draft. And beyond all these projections and uncertainties, there is one practical and immediate reason that makes David Walker even more relevant for the Ravens at this moment. While the focus is on the future, the current situation with the Ravens' edge rushers clearly shows that there's room and urgency for new pieces. Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owa are entering the final year of their contracts. Jadeveon Clowney, who played an important role in 2023, is also not guaranteed to stay long-term. This means Baltimore could face a complete overhaul of the position in 2025. And when you already anticipate this type of renewal, the draft becomes the most valuable tool to get ahead of the problem. In this context, Walker represents more than just a gamble. He's a viable answer to an upcoming need. It's not about expecting him to become a starter right away, but about bringing someone who can integrate into the rotation from the start, learn from the veterans, and take on more prominence over time. This is exactly how the Ravens have historically built their defenses, layer by layer, year after year, preparing for replacements before gaps appear. And it's important to remember, Baltimore isn't just thinking about quantity, but also about profile. The defense coordinated by Mike Macdonald and now maintained by Zach Orr requires versatility, intelligence, and a constant motor. Walker has already shown these traits. He has the right style to fit into the rotation and, with time, develop his technique and game reading. Furthermore, there's an important cap issue. Bringing in established names in free agency is expensive, and re-signing all current edge rushers may simply not be financially feasible, especially with Lamar Jackson's contract taking up a significant portion of the salary cap. The most efficient way to keep the defense strong and economical is by finding talent in the draft, and that's where players like Walker become essential. Baltimore cannot afford to rely solely on the current names. The team needs youth, energy, and fresh ideas in the pass rush. Someone who comes hungry with something to prove. Walker fits that profile. He matches the franchise's mentality, which values underestimated players, and turns hard work into on-field production. He would be part of a natural transition process that, if well planned, keeps a defensive unit among the best in the league. And it's not just about numbers or statistics. It's about keeping the Ravens' defensive identity alive, the one that has always made quarterback pressure one of the team's trademarks. With the risk of losing key pieces after 2024, bringing in Walker will be a clear step in preserving this culture. And all of this only reinforces a question that's been gaining traction. Isn't David Walker exactly the type of player who defines the DNA of a team like the Ravens? And if you made it this far, drop "David Walker is the piece the Ravens need" in the comments so I'll know you recognize the potential of this young pass rusher and how crucial he could be for Baltimore's defense in the future. Let's continue. When talking about the draft, we are not only projecting who could be a good player in the present, but also who has the potential to become a key piece in the future. David Walker could be exactly that for the Ravens. The NFL is a game of constant adaptations, and teams like Baltimore know that they can't just rely on established names to remain competitive in the long term. They have a look to the future and understand where they can invest now to ensure that the team remains relevant in the seasons to come. The idea behind betting on low-cost players in the draft is simple. The best teams know that by picking a talented player in the later rounds, they have a chance to mold him according to their needs, without the risk of spending millions on a gamble that doesn't always pay off. Walker fits perfectly into this profile. Not only does he have the physical and mental qualities to grow in Baltimore, but he also has the mentality of an underdog, always wanting to prove his worth. That's exactly what the team needs. Of course, the doubts about his size and background are real. But those who have followed the Ravens' history know that the franchise doesn't care much about these limitations when talent is present. The track record of players like Juden and Zadarius Smith, who started in similar positions to Walker's and became stars, shows that Baltimore has a sharp eye for finding value where others don't see it. The team already has this expertise. Now, it's a matter of whether they'll take the risk on another potential gem. What makes Walker such an interesting prospect is that he brings something extra, a real opportunity to create a new identity in the pass rush. He's not the same type of player as always, but rather a variation that, if well developed, could be even more effective. And this kind of innovation is exactly what Baltimore has always sought, whether in the trenches or the backfield. Placing Walker in the right role and giving him the space to develop his potential could be a decision that, over time, would deeply impact the team's defense. Betting on Walker is also a way to ensure depth and quality in the pass rush rotation. Today, the Ravens need more than just good starters. They need a unit that can rotate, with different pieces fitting into different situations. This is how Baltimore ensures that their defense remains unbeatable and prepared for the ups and downs of the NFL seasons. And if there's one thing we know about the Ravens' philosophy, it's that they value long-term work. In a draft that could be full of risky choices, taking a Walker in the third round could be a smart move that puts the team in a stronger position for future, without losing immediate competitiveness. Just as they've always done, the Ravens know that the best bets don't always have to be the most obvious ones. Now, the real question is, will Baltimore's vision of Walker be confirmed, and will he become the team's next big find? With everything we've discussed, it's clear David Walker is a name that deserves attention. Although he is still an underestimated prospect, he has the potential to become a crucial piece for the Ravens, bringing energy and explosiveness to the defense's pass rush. His performance at the Senior Bowl and his consistency in the FCS are proof that he can compete at the highest level. Baltimore cannot afford to make the mistake of ignoring an opportunity like this. The real question is, will the Ravens take the risk and bet on this talent that could transform their defensive line? If you also believe that Walker could be the key to strengthening Baltimore's defense, share your opinion in the comments and show just how important he could be for the team.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself. See you there, and until the next video, go Flock.